and I met with Senator Harry Reid about 9 months before he died. And of course, he's a private citizen now, and I wanted to brief him on the topic, and I wanted to get his kind of thought leadership on it because, you know, he was a Gang of Eight member, right? You know, which is the top most cleared senators and congressmen. He was the majority leader, for God's sakes, of the Senate. And I knew, you know, he helped sponsor the AAWSAP program that I mentioned, and you know, where they looked at Skinwalker Ranch and some other things. And I wanted to understand, like, what does Harry Reid actually know? Like, why did he, you know, give $21 million to DIA and Bigelow Aerospace for this? So I'm sitting there in Harry Reid's living room, you know, right next to him with some other witnesses that were there with me. And he straight up says, he's like, yeah, I knew we had UFO material. I was denied access for decades. I tried to get access. And then he explained some of his efforts during AAWSAP. And I was like, holy shit, did the former majority leader just say, did he just confirm this to me as well? You know, I was already talking to these amazing high level people, but I have Harry Reid literally saying, yes, we have material. And, you know, he knew it was non-human.
Did Harry Reid have personal experience with this?
I don't know if he's had any personal stuff in his personal life.
I mean, did he see it?
He said,
witness?
In terms of seeing the material himself, he said he was denied access for years, decades was his term. And he actually told me on behalf of me, he was going, so he had like a weekly call with President Joe Biden at the time. And he straight up said to me, he was going to talk to President Biden about this issue, literally. And then what he was telling me about AAWSAP, I was like, holy shit, I have like 20 other people that told me this, dude. So the real history, what fucking AAWSAP was, because I think there's a lot of people out there that think they were looking at ghosts, Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, they went to the ranch as a secondary and tertiary objective. But the real reason, so like there's a document that came out a couple years ago through FOIA from the Defense Intelligence Agency. There was this special access program request that Harry Reid, you might have seen this, I think like George Knapp and company have reported on this, that he sent to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, William Lynn. And it was asking for one of the most serious SAPs you can ask for, what they call a bigoted, waived special access program. So waived means it's limited congressional reporting. That is a class of special access programs. And bigoted means it's like by name. And it's like, it was like, you can read the FOIA document. It was like, you know, Harry Reid, James Inhofe, Lou Elizondo, etc. And I'm like, why are you asking for the most serious SAP to be created for a program that ostensibly is looking at Skinwalker Ranch and stuff? And it doesn't make any sense. So what really happened there, and you know, Harry Reid, God bless his soul, made this disclosure a couple weeks after we met in the New Yorker, and you can look this up. I think it was like a May 2021 New Yorker story where he says, I knew for decades, and he made this disclosure, not me. So I'm going to say the name of the contractor. Harry Reid said this, you know, we knew that Lockheed Martin had this material for decades. I tried to get access and I was denied. And specifically with the Lockheed Martin stuff, he was talking about during the AAWSAP program. And for the people who are on this program, I submitted this shit to the officer, got this cleared. So don't freak out, but I'm telling the truth here. So Lockheed Martin wanted to divest itself from this material at a specific facility that's known to me, that I provided to the Inspector General, like street address, all that shit, right? And the idea was, if they made a catcher's mitt, a security catcher's mitt for this shit, at, you know, most serious SAP possible, the contractor and the other government customer, which was the Central Intelligence Agency, for that specific Lockheed material. And it was shit that they recovered from like the 50s and stuff. And it was like bits and pieces of like hall structure, shit like that. And so they were going to tech transfer it. And the $21 or $22 million was actually for Bigelow Aerospace to build out, you know, facilities in Las Vegas and material analysis equipment. And I saw the staff meeting slides. I saw the paperwork. Like there's a paperwork trail I've seen on this shit. And I talked to the people involved in this program. And, even Jim Lakatsky, who ran the program, who's a retired DIA officer, PhD in engineering, even made this disclosure in his book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon.
I've got more information on that, so stick with me, right? And just to recap, right, we're going to continue the clip here. Right, David Grusch is just saying everything I said before, right, earlier, right, about that. And clearly I didn't just come up with it. This is all just from stuff I looked up. But David Grusch saying this, right? Lockheed Martin had a craft for decades that they were withholding, right? From what crash? Is it a crash that we're aware of? And AAWSAP was set up to get this craft back, and they were being denied. And even Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid was being denied and wanted to talk to President Biden about this. Did that happen? There's been no confirmation that, current President Biden, was told about this, right? It's just very interesting. All right. So again, I've got more clips about this, but let's continue here with David Grusch.
Page 152 to 153. And he also made a disclosure a couple weeks ago. I think it was on Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, where he's like, yeah, we had a whole craft and we broke into the hull and we gained access. And he ran that through the same, security process as I did. And so Jim Lakatsky, who ran this program, is also going on the record that he is personally aware of intact vehicles and everything. But
so they gained access. What does that mean? And by what method did they gain access?
The way he wrote it in his book, I can only infer it sounded forcible. So through some kind of, means, I don't know if it was like CO2 laser or something. I don't actually know how they gained access, but imagine it was not permissive access. They broke into the damn thing.
The exact thing that James Lakatsky said is they breached the hull, right? And that this craft inside was the size of a football field, which later David Grusch also brought up in a presentation earlier this year, a private presentation that kind of leaked out. Is it the same craft? I think so. There's no real way to know, right? It's very confusing. But the fact that they had gotten into this craft, and maybe that's why Lockheed Martin didn't want to give it up, right? Because in my opinion, you don't give up something you haven't figured out yet. You might give it up if you figured it out, right? If you reverse engineered it, then you don't need it anymore, maybe. But why would you give it up if you haven't cracked the code? You would never give it up, right? So therein lies the problem with AAWSAP, this craft, and again, Mike Gold being with Bigelow during this time, right? And now he's testifying. Did he know about this? And if he did, is he going to talk about this at the hearing? Why wouldn't you, right? Is it because there's no real proof to show any of this? Like it's just on the cusp? Not sure. Let's continue.
So this thing is essentially sealed. And it's some sort of what was the shape of this thing?
Lakatsky didn't disclose the shape on this particular vehicle. As far as I
what about the dimensions?
I don't believe he did in his book. But I think it's like chapter 11 in his new book or something. I glanced at it, but he did make that disclosure on video as well. And I do encourage both the Aero Office, which is the DoD's UAP task force successor, and Congress to ask Dr. James Lakatsky to come in for classified testimony, because the disclosure in his one book that he wrote with Colin Kelleher, George Knapp, and in the second book, well, the guy saying he has close personal knowledge, he needs to go to Congress. So I don't know James Lakatsky, but I do encourage him to be a fact witness. But going back to that transfer with Lockheed, long story short, can't get in all the nuanced details, but basically the CIA said fuck you to DIA and Lockheed, and it was totally killed. So Harry Reid's request to get the material transferred to the AAWSAP program was totally killed because of bureaucracy and kind of fiefdom stuff. So they used that money And then they wrote those defense intelligence reference documents, the DIRDs, as a lot of people who's familiar with it listening will know about. And then they did look at Skinwalker Ranch because they thought that studying kind of the more woo-woo phenomenon aspects of this, and I've never been to the ranch, so I've never experienced the ranch for myself, but obviously I think we both know a bunch of people that have been to the ranch and have seen some trippy stuff, or at least allege that. They thought that they would be able to gain currency with the program, and in this case CIA, to unlock the key for the Lockheed Martin stuff. Which actually, I'll tell you right now, it's like so weird to say that, but I ran that shit through security. To me, it's like an out-of-body experience to talk about that kind of detailed sensitivity, stuff like that. But basically, they studied the ranch to gain favor, to be like, hey, look at all this stuff we're figuring out, this paranormal stuff that's somehow connected to the phenomenon on the ranch. But ultimately, they never gained favor with the government customer. And then the program kind of died a slow death because of a lot of politics in the Pentagon. So that's kind of the long but short of it with the AAWSAP program, that, I wanted to make sure the public knew it's not what you think it was. There was some other stuff behind the scenes that, I wanted to speak truth to power on.
So there you go. So basically, David Grusch is just trying to explain what exactly the true intention of the AAWSAP program was, right? And if you notice, he never makes any mention of ATIP, which is interesting. But that it wasn't to study ghost at Skinwalker Ranch, right? This is what he's alleging, right? They did do that, but only because their initial goal to get this craft back from Lockheed Martin was shut down. And they couldn't get it. They couldn't get it back in the hands of the U.S. government. Right. All right. So don't worry, y'all. I got some more clips. So he's talking about James Lukatsky. He's saying, I hope he testifies to this, right? Because of what he's saying. He should testify, right? Well, James Lukatsky was asked if he would testify. And let's hear his response. What do you think? You think James Lukatsky said he would testify? Some of y'all already know the answer. So here he is with Robert Fleischer, is his name, on exomagazine.tv. With Colm Kelleher. James Lukatsky is in the middle there, Robert Fleischer to the left.
There are some hearings planned. There will be more hearings. Dr. Lukatsky, could you imagine, or you, Dr. Kelleher, could you imagine going there to testify before Congress? Because both of you obviously seem to know much more than what you're allowed to say in the book, also regarding potential crash recovery projects going on.
I personally would not be in favor of testifying, because I believe that the agreements that I signed, the non-disclosure agreements that I signed, both at the corporate level and at the government level, preclude me from doing that. And there's been a lot of talk in DC and the Congress with respect to the congressional hearings that quote unquote protections are being offered. The fact is that if you violate a non-disclosure agreement, you are at the mercy of the consequences of violating those agreements, regardless of all of the talk regarding protection of whistleblowers. The next congressional hearing is scheduled currently for November 13th. It is being chaired by Nancy Mace, and there will be Congressman Tim Burchett and Congressman Anna Paulina Luna, and the usual cast of characters will be there. There are rumors and innuendo flying around Washington, D.C. right now regarding which whistleblowers will step up. But I personally don't believe that it is appropriate for me to go and testify under those circumstances.
How about you, Dr. Lukatsky?
I completely agree with what Colm says. For me, it would have to be in a compartment. Kona Blue would have to be reactivated by DHS. I would have to have, remember, I retired in 2016. I would have to have my SCI, top secret SCI clearance reinstated. I would need all these things to occur. As for open testimony, the answer is no. And that's what surprises me, because to say it more particularly what columnist said, you know, when you get a clearance from these organizations, DIA adjudicates TSSCI here for DOD employees. CIA adjudicates their clearances. You know, Congress can say what they want and they can provide what protections they want. But if you work for those organizations, you're going to be very leery of crossing them, because all of a sudden, while they may not pull your clearances, they may limit what compartments you could be in. So it's very risky for these people to say that they're going into open testimony. And I don't see how they're saying if they have anything legitimate to say. I mean, we do, but, you know, I just listed out the qualifications I would need, and that would be very time consuming. And I don't, and we also have to remember, both of us, as Colin mentioned, you know, his industrial agreements. If there's proprietary information that's in, you can't mention that at all, regardless of what clearance or compartment you're in or skiff you're testifying in. That's proprietary information. So I don't see how this is all going to work out. And so my answer would be no. I would not go unless an awful lot happened.
There you go. And by the way, we have a German vetted channel now. So if you want, go check that out. The link is in the description. Boom. Apparently the stream cut out for a little bit, but it came back. I didn't do anything. So not sure what happened there, but interesting. I'm just asking questions about the hearing and these guys, and next thing you know, they're trying to shut it down. So if you want to know where the real suppression is, y'all, it's here. It's people like me who ask questions about this. They just immediately don't want us doing that because they just want you to support them no matter what. So someone clearly tried to get this stream copyrighted, and somehow we're back. And they're trying to report my channel currently and trying to get me shut down as we speak, as I'm talking to you. People are reporting the channel, trying to get me shut down. I can see messages coming in through my YouTube. Very interesting, right? Very interesting. But we're going to continue. We're back. You know, YouTube's helping me out, not letting them do it. All right, let's Patrick, the feed got cut. Yeah, I saw that, but we're back. All right, let's see here. Is the feed still on, y'all? Just give me a yes in the chat if you can still see the feed. Everything's fine. Okay, cool. Thank you, Ms. Brookers. Should be allowed to ask questions, y'all. All right, I've got one more clip here. Bear with me. Where is it? Okay, right here. You know what? Let's read Jeremy's post here. So Jeremy Corbell put out this post. When was this? October 27th. He said, imagine this extraordinary belief, likely fact. Lockheed Martin tried to do the right thing for the United States of America to transfer a UFO, an actual whole physical non-human intelligence NHI designed and built, possibly interstellar space/time travel capable craft that they had in their possession at the time, likely still do. So if there's any question of if this was like a piece of something, no, they're saying they have the entire craft. So there should be no ambiguity as to what, this thing is, right? Like street address is known by folks such as David Grusch, as said on the Joe Rogan podcast, but many, many, many other American journalists and specific American citizens who are true patriots and have constitutional understanding and federal lawyers who are fully informed. This was attempted to be facilitated in 2007 to 2008 by the vice president of Lockheed Martin at the time, likely a true American patriot who I have not had the pleasure of meeting personally, but I hope to be able to. And that transfer to the Defense Intelligence Agency was an attempt to bring back this craft into the legal and constitutional oversight of the United States of America. I don't think that's meant to be overnight. However, this material transfer was inhibited by, at the time, head director of science and technology for the CIA. That person has been named as Glenn Gaffney. We'll get to more of that in a moment. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. What do you do after that is up to you, right? But if you watch this clip, you will understand George, mother effing Knapp, and I've been telling you this for years. And so it was one of the people who fought for that transfer from within the DIA named James Jim Lakatsky, former head of the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program, AAWSAP. And he told you a little bit about it on an episode of Weaponized. The only time that he testified to that on camera and on the record that is public is currently aware of. Well, I wouldn't say testified. Yeah, being on a podcast is not testimony. You can lie on podcast. Just saying. But this is a cool clip. Shout out to Jeremy and George for putting this together.
I think it is entirely feasible that this UFO cover-up exists within a private company.
Lockheed Martin.
Or Lockheed.
Lockheed was one of those involved.
Lockheed wanted to divest their NHI, non-human intelligence, UAP or UFO materials, a material transfer of UAP that was supposed to happen to AAWSAP from Lockheed, and that was shut down specifically by CIA-involved individuals. And there's an individual who was head of science and technology at that time. This craft had a streamlined configuration suitable for aerodynamic flight, but no intakes, no exhaust, no wings or control surfaces. In fact, it appeared not to have an engine, fuel tanks, or fuel. So what they were hoping to get to study from Lockheed, do you know?
Yeah. Yes.
There is non-human technology, something from somewhere else, whether it's ET or interdimensional, something that we did not make, that crashed, that we've been analyzing, that's been stashed in presumably special access programs, controlled by defense contractors, presumably funded secretly by the public. Not even members of Congress get to see.
It was Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Sixth Man to Walk on the Moon, a guy that I filmed a bunch with. When he died, this memo was in his archive. It wasn't something the public was supposed to see. But additionally, when this got out, it shows this guy Wilson, Admiral Wilson, who I believe was the J2 at the time. The J2 has oversight over all the black budget SAPs. And he was furious that he didn't have access to one of them, let's say, I don't know, at Lockheed. Whose job is it to not let people know the fundamental nature of reality that we live in? As we've always suspected, the CIA has a lot of communication and oversight and kind of their hands in a lot of these retrieval programs.
Let's say Marco Rubio convinces the Pentagon or Lockheed Martin, let me into the hangar, let me see the craft. Oh, there's the bodies. He gets to see that with his own eyes and then goes back and what? Can he say it?
You've got a guy who did the investigation, provided that to the inspector general and said, here is the street address of where this UFO material is being held. Can we assume
that this craft that Dr. Lakatsky has direct firsthand knowledge of is exactly what Lockheed has.
You're telling us, you told us, because you were allowed to tell us, that our government has a UFO in its possession and has been able to access the inside of it, right?
Yes.
Well, that's
It's delicate. It's
why is it delicate?
They're enemies. And our enemies, you can be sure they're listening to this show right now.
I don't think anybody involved with the cover-up should face any.
Real quick, shout out to Jeremy for really pressing James in that interview. I have to admit, he really did press him, really get him to say some stuff. And yes, it's just on a podcast, but still, it was worthwhile. Okay. So again, yeah, shout out to Jeremy for really pressing James Lakatsky. And I'm sure he's being pressed behind the scenes to testify, right? Because the fact that James Lakatsky doesn't want to testify, but will write it in a book and say it on a podcast is concerning. Come in front of the American people and say that. What's the difference? If you're going to say it publicly, what is the difference, right? Is it that you don't want to go under oath and say it? I don't know.
Prison time. Let's move on.
I'm with you on that up to a point. There are lines that should not be crossed.
Like what?
If you threaten to kill somebody, or if you actually do silence them through violence.
Got you. Agreed. Agreed.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.